Hello everyone, this is Inga. As some of you know, I really love bread. Wore the right top for this occasion. I eat bread basically every day, but I do not own a toaster. I usually either eat my bread fresh or I would toast it over a pan on the stovetop, which I feel like gives me a similar result. But some time ago, I heard about this very special toaster that apparently makes better toast in a way where you can actually taste the difference. Also, it has a very, very expensive price tag of $300, which is crazy. That's a lot of money for a toaster. But I really wanted to see for myself if that was true, so I brought it home with me to spend some time with it, get to know each other a little bit better, to see if we're a good match. Also want to say that this is not an ad, it was not gifted. I bought this toaster because I wanted to try it out and make a video about it. It's been a little over a month now, my relationship with this very special and expensive toaster. Before I go into how it's been so far, I feel like I should at least try to explain a little bit of why it is so expensive. So you know how usually when you use toasters, it does crisp up the bread, but it kind of dries it out? This specific toaster avoids that by using the steam cooking method, where you're gonna pour water into like this little slot on top, which then goes into the toaster oven. The heat creates this steam that helps seal in the moisture and the flavor of the bread before crisping it up with additional heat. So as a result, you get this beautiful golden brown color on the outside and that like really soft, fluffy texture on the inside. So it's all very scientific. Even though I will say, when I unboxed this, what really caught my eye was just the design of it. It just looked so cute. It also comes with this tiny little cup which you use to pour in the water. I was very worried I was going to lose it. It also came with this manual which kind of goes through what each setting is. But even if you lose this, the instructions are actually on the oven itself. I also really love these little symbols around the dial here. Each one of them stand for a different kind of mode. As somebody who lives in New York and has a relatively tiny kitchen, I did not have enough counter space. So what I did was actually put it on top of my movable table here. It does get kind of hot to touch, so I made sure it had its own personal space. You would think the first thing I make is a piece of toast, right? Since that's what it's known for, but no, I think I just got overexcited and I decided to make a croque monsieur. It makes absolutely no sense, but I think I just had all the ingredients at home. I just bought like a pumpernickel loaf from my favorite bakery. So I just built that together, a slice of bread, some sauce, some ham, some cheese, double that layer, and I popped it in the oven on pizza mode because that's the mode you're supposed to use for toast with toppings. I really also just love the sound the turn dial makes, like the little clock ticking. And then the little ding at the end when the bread is done. I can also hear it from my room, which is really nice, so then I know when to come and get my bread. And you know what? It turned out pretty well. The cheese was bubbling on top, it was all melted and gooey. The bread wasn't as crisp as I wanted it to be, but I think that's also because I was very ambitious. In terms of everything else, I was pretty pleased. It was really cool kind of being able to experiment right off the bat with a sort of like open face sandwich situation. This is like the first of 30-something items I tested in the toaster oven, so it is going to be quite the journey. So after being super adventurous on my first try, I decided to explore the sandwich bread mode a little bit more. Sandwich bread mode is basically the toast mode, your average sliced bread. And the first couple slices of sandwich bread I toasted was actually frozen, specifically a frozen sourdough loaf. That's actually how I usually store fresh bread. Reheating these frozen slices of bread is actually part of my morning routine. This is what I eat for breakfast. It was very exciting to see the difference where when I toasted these in the toaster oven, the bread did have that like fluffiness I missed from when I would toast it over the pan. It was definitely more moist. The texture was also chewy. I did also experiment with more like a country bread style type of loaf, which I toasted on the artisan bread mode, which actually gives it an even crispier exterior, so you see that like browning around the edges. I think I actually burnt it a little bit in the beginning. I think it just sat there for too long, but lesson learned. Did not do that again. But interestingly enough, no matter how crisp the outsides will get, the inside will always be just as soft and fluffy, which I really appreciated. And really, I just enjoyed these first couple slices with the usual things: avocado, ricotta and honey, or just butter. That crisp on the outside. The mouthfeel was just so good. But I think what is the most fascinating is how the lights go on and off and on and off. I think that's the sort of like precise heat control they're known for. Also the steam, like how it just slowly spreads across the window, and it was just like working its magic. That was pretty cool. That's like free entertainment right there for me. I could just watch that. I also did try testing 2 pieces of toast at the same time. I don't think there was a big difference in toasting 1 slice at a time and toasting 2 slices, so that was great, because then from now on I could just make sandwiches and toast them both at the same time. But then I also toasted some cheesecake Danish and cheesecake babka, both of which are very buttery type pastries, and I should have used it on pastry mode, but I actually ended up toasting these on just like sandwich bread mode, which is why you'll see round around the edges. But because of the moisture from the steam, I have to say the babka was almost like, when you get like a fresh like brioche bun, buttery softness. And I want to say the babka had been sitting in my fridge for like maybe 3 to 4 days, and it really just like resuscitated it. I think the Danish got a little bit burnt. That's when I learned the hard way that using the right setting for the right type of bread really does matter, because as I was trying to figure it out, I toasted an old baguette and a chocolate croissant on sandwich bread mode instead of pastry mode, RIP. I don't know what I was thinking. They both ended up being very burnt. Still ate them anyways after scraping off the top, but yeah, the right setting really does matter. And also, if the bread or pastry is too tall, it will get burnt because it's too close to the heat source. I only saw afterwards that apparently it can't be taller than 2.2 inches. I did turn my burnt bagel into a burnt bagel sandwich though, and it was very good. Even though the outside is crisp and burnt, the inside is still chewy soft, which I thought was just amazing. I also tried toasting a waffle, a frozen waffle. I ended up toasting this waffle twice because I felt like there wasn't enough color, but I actually think once was enough in the end. So it wasn't as soft as I normally like to enjoy these. But yeah, I think for toaster waffle, the difference wasn't that big for me. But before I move on though, of course I eventually got milk bread, and when I tell you that it was possibly the best piece of toast I've ever had, there is no exaggeration. It was really just perfection. Like, I think this is what I think of when I think of the perfect toast. Because even though regular toasters do give bread that sort of like crispiness on the outside, by giving it crispiness, it takes away some of that moisture. So the bread becomes a little more dried out. Whereas this toaster oven actually tries to preserve that sort of springiness. So it really is that beautiful golden crispiness on the outside, and then that soft, fluffy, slightly chewy springiness on the inside. I added butter here for B-roll purposes, but honestly, for the ones I had afterwards, the many pieces of bread I had afterwards, I just ate it straight up. I can't go back to toasting my bread on a pan. So at this point of my journey too, I've already experimented with a lot of things. I wanted to just give the toaster oven a little bit of a cleaning because the crumbs were starting to collect. One thing I dreaded about having a toaster was not knowing how to clean it properly. It's actually a really simple thing. There's a tray at the very bottom where the crumbs collect that you can just pull out, brush the crumbs off, give it a wipe, and then just simply slide it back in. The little parts inside, some of them are also removable, which makes it very easy for me to kind of go in with like a little damp cloth to wipe it down. I'm glad I am able to keep it clean. So now that I've started getting a hang of like sandwich bread mode and artisan bread mode, I decided to delve into pastry mode a little bit more, since I've obviously been neglecting it when I should have been using it. So I bought a very nice looking croissant from a French bakery. I ate a little bit of it the day of, but then I wanted to reheat it the next day. This is probably one of the things I looked forward to the most, because this toaster is most famous for reheating croissants in a way that makes it taste like it just came right out of the oven. They were not bluffing. You know how when it's a day old, it kind of firms up a little bit, but when I took it out of the toaster oven, it was so flaky and so buttery, and it just smelled so good. I think that was probably one of the most like eye-opening moments for me, because I feel like we usually struggle with reheating croissants, crisp on the outside and that like butteriness on the inside. That to me was a moment where I was like, okay, I kind of get it now. But part of me was also like, how much of this is because of the croissant itself? So I went ahead and got a normal croissant just like from my local supermarket, and honestly the results were just as mind-blowing. So I really do think it's not too much of a reach to say that this toaster oven has the ability to make even a regular croissant taste very expensive. Also, I found out that pastry mode is the mode you're supposed to use to reheat baguettes. Of course, I have to put that to the test because baguettes are my most favorite type of bread, and the only reason I had leftover baguettes was because I bought 2 the day before and I finished 1 in a day. What I really wanted to test out with the baguettes though was the 3 different types of methods they have specified. Each of these have a very different texture. The one that's in a block cut, it is crisp on the outside, but it's much softer on the inside compared to the other 2. Whereas for the crosswise, they're very, very crisp throughout. Still a little bit chewy on the inside. The one sliced lengthwise to me was the most interesting because it was crispy, but almost also airy in a way. It's not like a hard, crunchy crisp and more of like a chewy crisp. I don't know which one I prefer yet. I think it depends on what I want to enjoy it with. Different from the croissant, the re-toasted baguette can't really compare to the one fresh out of the oven. I have to clarify though that this baguette was 2 days old, so it was a little stale and it is just hard as a rock. So that difference alone I think is very impressive. Once I realized how amazing this pastry mode was, I kind of just went a little crazy and started warming up everything. A blueberry scone, which was dry and hard when I put it in, but it was soft and crumbly when I pulled it out. Oh my god, it smells so good. It smells like a bakery. I also warmed up a banana Danish. So good, so flaky. I also warmed up some cookies, and that was, I think, one of the best decisions. It came out so soft. Ooh, it's warm. And when I broke it, the chocolate was like ooey gooey, melted with a slight chew. You know that feeling you get when somebody mentions like warm cookies right out of the oven at grandma's home? That was the feeling I got. Part of what makes pastry mode so great is it's almost comparable to a microwave oven in terms of like efficiency and how fast it can warm things up. You don't have to preheat it, and whereas microwave oven tends to dry out, pastry mode combined with the steam technology, it still retains that moisture, warms up the bread, and doesn't brown it. But at the very end, it actually does add a little bit of that crisp back into it. This is the reason why I decided to use this $300 toaster oven to reheat my leftover day-old chicken nuggets. Because I was really craving chicken nuggets the night before, and I bought the 20-piece box. So I had some left over the next day, and I decided to just, you know, experiment a little bit. These nuggets turned out like I had just bought them. They were crispy on the outside, the meat was tender on the inside. Wow. It does make me want to experiment a lot more with deep fried foods, so that is definitely on the agenda for the future. The other mode that I was very excited about was the pizza mode. I really wanted to see if this toaster could reheat leftover pizza better than the way we would usually do it. So I bought a slice from Joe's Pizza, which is one of my go-tos here. The only problem is Joe's Pizza slices are really big. This toaster oven is not that big. So I ended up having to cut it into a smaller slice, and I was watching it through the window the entire time, watching that cheese melt, the sausage and the pepperoni kind of crisp up. It really did feel like, again, I just pulled pizza fresh out of the oven. And when I tried to fold the pizza a little bit, you can actually hear how crisp the crust is. And when I bit into it, almost everything was perfect. From the crust to the toppings to the cheese. I really just don't think I've ever had leftover pizza that good. I also reheated some bagels. Came out perfect, a perfect golden brown. Made some open-faced sandwiches like this cheese and ham sandwich, as well as this egg and cheese one with a little bit of peppers for decoration. For both of these, the bread was just still so fluffy and so tender underneath. Really just shocked at how good that balance was. So now that I've kind of dabbled into all of the 4 specific modes that this toaster has, I wanted to experiment a little bit with the oven mode, which honestly for me, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'll use this as much because I do have my conventional oven, but I wanted to kind of compare a little bit and see if there was a difference. I baked and roasted a couple different things, like roasted some cauliflower, which is a pretty standard side vegetable for me. It actually came out pretty decent. I don't think there was a big difference. I did kind of fill up the baking tray. The amount is limited, which is what happened when I tried to bake some scallops, which again, turned out pretty okay. The only thing was I couldn't bake too many at the same time. I also baked some ready-made pastry dough. This was a frozen chocolate croissant. I think it was a little more firm than I expected. The inside was just as good. So not bad. But then, because last week I was making some chocolate chip cookies to bring over to my friend's apartment, I decided to do a little side-by-side comparison of baking the same dough. First thing I will say though, the toaster oven only has 3 heat settings for oven mode. I needed to bake my cookies at a lower temperature at 325, so I ended up just baking them at 350. The cookies baked in the conventional oven has more of a spread, whereas the toaster oven is almost like smaller and taller. The cookies baked in the toaster oven is also crunchier, crispier versus the soft chewiness of the conventional oven cookies. Again, it may have to do with the difference in heat temperature. I personally much prefer the texture the conventional oven gives me, so I think this is the part where the toaster oven fell short a little bit. So pretty much at this point, I've played around with all the different kinds of modes. So I decided to just go a little bit out there with experimentation and just try different things. A lot of you asked if you can make a grilled cheese with this. The answer is yes, you can. It's actually on the back of this instruction manual here. I buttered up both sides of the bread and I shaved some truffle gouda because truffle gouda was on sale. One side definitely turned out more brown than the other. The side facing the top, right, you can see that it's like really crispy, whereas the other side, you don't see that much browning going on. So I actually think the best way to make grilled cheese in this toaster oven specifically might be to flip it halfway through. Even though it is crisp to the point of being burnt on the outside, the inside is still fluffy as ever. It's just, you can't go wrong all the way. You will always be halfway right. So I made some roast beef, which is actually a recipe provided by the brand itself. You cook this on pastry mode. So after searing the beef on all sides, I toasted it in the toaster oven for 10 minutes. I don't even know if toasting is the right word, but basically I'm warming it up. And then after that's done, I let it rest in the toaster oven for another 10 minutes without turning the heat on. And I honestly was just so surprised at how it turned out. When I sliced into it, it was tender, the color was beautiful. So this is one of the unexpected findings I had. I would have never known that I'd be able to make roast beef in this toaster oven. On pastry mode, no less. I also made some pasta, put some mozzarella cheese on top, and decided to go with the pizza mode setting instead of the regular oven mode to melt the cheese, because I remembered how pizza mode has that stronger heat source on the top, almost like a broiler. It melted it wonderfully. I got that beautiful cheese pull and I was just so delighted at how it turned out. That's what gave me the idea of broiling fish in the toaster oven. Broiling fish is actually one of my favorite ways to make fish currently. Put my fish in, let it cook for around 10 minutes. And I have to say, this is one of those things that turned out even better than broiling it in a traditional oven. I think the steam really helped the fish stay tender. And as somebody who grew up eating steamed fish, I just really enjoyed that texture because steamed fish has that sort of bounce to it that you can't really replicate in a lot of other methods. And I guess because of this combined function with the steam and the crisping going on, I got the best of both worlds. So yeah, that's my 30 days with this wonderful toaster. And again, thinking back on, just why it's so expensive, the steaming function alone is something that I think really makes it stand out. It does deliver on its promise. And also just personally for me, I really enjoyed the pastry mode function. It really is able to do something that other alternatives cannot achieve. You are limited in the amount you can make. You can't bake like a batch of cookies. And again, it is a very high price. But if you're like me and you love bread a lot, good bread really does bring me a lot of joy, then I think it could be a good fit. I don't know if I need a $300 toaster in my life, but this is something I want. It has given me a lot of happiness this past month. Now that I have it, you'll probably see it in a lot more videos from now on. I hope this was helpful to some of you if you've been thinking about getting one, but otherwise, I will see you guys next time. Bye!